What we've been trying to do with our team is take the science of peace seriously. There are very few scholars who study peaceful societies. So we have been studying these sustainably peaceful societies. We reached out to a large group of academics who study things that are relevant to it, everything from neuroscience and sort of brain reactions to outgroups, to macro political structures and economic structures and inequality, poverty, climate change.
The group consists of scholars and social scientists and practitioners who are trying to understand the conditions needed for sustainable peace in the world, to try to figure out what are the conditions that are needed and how do they interact with each other in order to sustain peace.
When I've explained this project, I always have issues with talking about it in a way that's clear. And the person I was talking to said, oh, so it's kind of like designing a drug when you're thinking about peace, thinking about what the possible side effects are for different solutions, thinking about, if you change one thing, how it might impact something else.
Peace at a communal level is fundamentally simple. It really is how members of one group treat members of another group. And those groups can be ethnic groups or religious groups or political groups or gender groups, but it really comes down to whether there's sort of positive reciprocity, whether members of one group treat the other group with respect and trust and rapport, and that is returned in kind. And if that is the core dynamic of the society, it bubbles up into norms and taboos and institutions that really reinforce that.
We are, as a species and as societies, really geared toward collaboration. That collaboration breaks down when we don't have formal or informal institutions that help us navigate our differences and our conflicts. And so the Sustainable Peace Project is trying to understand which formal and informal institutions can help us really magnify those tendencies that we have toward cooperation.
For my research, I've looked at this phenomenon of peace systems, by which I mean clusters of neighboring societies that don't make war. And sometimes these neighboring societies that are not making war with each other don't make war, period. They're just non-warring societies. But in other cases, they still have that potential and sometimes engage in war outside the system. But what's intriguing is how did they develop a system where war is just not part of that mode of interacting among these societies? And how do they maintain this basically an island of peace, sometimes within a larger context of societies that do make war outside of that system?
We are trying to understand the science of peace. We are trying to begin with the work of anthropologists and political scientists like Doug Fry that have studied peaceful societies and more enduring forms of peace, but then branch out into other areas of science.
There we are moving into a territory where we can use quantitative models to actually predict what sort of dynamics groups would be exposed to. The model allows us to predict what the dynamics of peace would be between communities or between groups, depending upon the particular situation they find themselves in.
So our hope is that we can create these simulations to allow decision makers to not only understand the unintended consequences of well-intentioned actions and policies, but also then to work at more local levels to plug in sort of data and information from their community to understand why their community has the dynamics they have, whether it's chronic violence or chronic poverty, or whether it's more sustainably peaceful dynamics.
If we continue to refine and validate our model through our research, then we may be giving people a new way to think about and think through the factors that can promote peace.
From my point of view, we are at the kind of a pivotal point where I hope that we can, let's say, expand the work to a point where it will become a really useful operational tool for the international community.